Hello and welcome back to our series All About You. Today, again, we are here, myself and my co-host Paula Pluck, to talk to you about mindfulness, something that's very close to both of our hearts and something that's been around for, believe it or not, centuries, different cultures, different kind of backgrounds. So Paula, what's your experience of mindfulness?
Well, it's been, really a huge part of my life. I've practiced for 27 years. I've taught secularly and in spiritual communities. So I basically took what I learned on the mat, if you like, in the ashram, in the temples, into the workplace. So I was a HR director and started to see all of these harmonization projects, redundancies, downsizing, expansion. People actually needed a way to hold their nerve, to feel peace, to not get into the eddies of worry, not to run away on autopilot. So I started to introduce it into my corporate life. And then I reincarnated as a twin mum. And at that point, I wrote my first book on it. And it was, because I gave up my job in the city. I wanted to be at home, and I lectured at a local college on mindfulness for a bit. And I wrote this book, which was really wonderful. It's just a nice thing to do. And I carried on. And then as the boys got a bit older, I created Smart Foundations, which is the SMART stands for stress management and relaxation training. And the foundation is don't build your house on sand. So, you are authentically doing the work, if you like. And what I loved about all of the spirituality and the science coming together, so what we were, the scientists were proving, they were backing up that mindfulness increases your happiness, your contentment, it decreases depression, anxiety. So this was a really lovely thing. And I actually was working with the director of Mind, the wellbeing director, and he'd been on a training with me. And, we had a chat. Well, okay, why don't we think a bit more about the joyride of mindfulness as it being, not just a tool for reducing anxiety, stress, and everything else, but what about enhancing love, happiness, joy in your life, having a sense of peace and connection. So that's how we sort of I got into teaching it and having my own company the last 10 years. And I've written things like the Mindful Wellbeing Program, the Mindful Happiness Program. I've written books for children. I'm in the middle of writing one for adults. And that's sort of where I'm at it. There's, I guess, we'll get into this, but it's more about mindfulness may have become a bit mindlessness in terms of application, because you can't pick up a book or a magazine or you go somewhere without hearing about it. Yeah. So it's actually, is there a depth of understanding? And I'm sure as we go through our conversation, that'll come out. What about you? How did you get into it?
Again, it was, like I said at the beginning, it was very much a kind of a family, Ayurvedic, humanistic approach to life. And it's about being grateful, really, because one of the things that certainly in cultures, it's about being grateful for who you are, where you are, what you do, how you do it. And again, looking at life very simply, because the less you have, the more grateful you are. The more you have, the more you want. And I think mindfulness was one of those where it kind of, certainly in my career, as with yours, you talk about working within institutions and helping others, and again, finding ways to help others, support others, and the anxiety that brought people to a point where stress and breakdown of relationships and things were happening. So I kind of took the view that for me to be able to share this knowledge and skill and support others, I really need to be up my game and be in a position to do that. So my quest was, well, if you're going to teach it, then you need to live it.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
very much I try and do that myself. So when I've offered training and written things or kind of just been there as a support mechanism for institutions, what have you. It's great because it's going back to a conversation we had in our last discussion about enjoying what you do.
Yeah.
And but living it. And I think one of my biggest successes, again going back to what we talked about
Yeah.
success last time, was somebody who was an absolute skeptic, and he was a HR director, funnily enough. And by the time we had our first session, which was a 45-minute session in a group, he turned back to me and he said, I was here because I thought I'd give it a go to tick the
Yeah.
boxes. And then he said, and actually, I totally get it, which threw me. Not that I didn't believe what I was saying I did, but when somebody's so skeptical and they come back and they give you that feedback, you think, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's really good. So from there on, I try and introduce it in my life. I try and introduce it into any practices that I do and I have, which is really interesting. And I'm always still looking for inspiration. And now a little bird tells me that your inspiration, one of your inspirations, came from the Dalai Lama. Is that right?
Yeah. I've been privileged enough to have trainings with the Dalai Lama. And one of the really interesting things that shocked me on the first training with him was when he appeared, a sort of, there was an emotional response. Like it was almost like a sort of tear at the back of my eye. And I thought, what is this? And I said to my husband at the time, the only way I can describe it is he was so empty, he was full.
Yeah.
I.e., so empty of his story and full of his spirit, the spirit of compassion, the cultivation of wisdom, love, peace, kindness, joy. He was emanating it. Every atom of his being was emanating it. And having been brought up Catholic, it made me realize what it was like to touch the hem of Jesus. The idea there is actually you're in the aura of someone who's transcended their story. And he's got a massive story, come on, all of the stuff he could be getting onto, ruminating about, stressing about, and yet he's let that go, and he's coming from, again, the heart center. He's coming from that space of peace. And it's true teachers for me who, because mindfulness has become so mainstream, which is fantastic, by the way, it's a great thing, but it can get diluted. It can become a little bit impotent if we forget that Buddha gave metta too, which is loving kindness. So we're holding our awareness, because mindfulness is simply awareness, the training of the brain as well. And we're holding that awareness with non-judgmental awareness in love. But people are getting aware of their neurosis, but they don't have the capacity, or the teachers that are teaching them aren't teaching them how to hold that in loving kindness. So I like to think now of mindfulness as heartfulness. That's all I call it. Okay. And we dance down the road of the freedom to love, the freedom. So you've got the freedom to change your story, to reframe it, because what we do with our awareness is we have inquiry, and the inquiry is, okay, I'm hearing my thoughts. My thoughts are impacting my behavior. So what's psychological is biological. So it's impacting my feelings. I'm firing and wiring cortisol, adrenaline, maybe lactate. So these are all the neurotransmitters for stress. Instead of, actually, why not fire joy, peace, happiness, relaxation, all of these other beautiful emotions that lead to freedom, that put us in the relaxation response. So for me, the dance is more about being authentic and living your life in more aliveness.
Again, and a very, very important point there about being authentic, authentically you. That's what I tend to call it. Authentically you. But it does take a while to get to know you, doesn't it? Because, and we've talked about this before, getting to know who you are. And I can remember offering this at a seminar, and I put the question to some people, and somebody in the back said to me, "But I know who I am." I said, "Do you really know who you are?" Yeah, I know who I am. And so the question was, well, if you know who you are, then I'm not quite sure why you're here, because this is about who you are, if you like. And what's interesting is sometimes we don't know what we don't know. We don't know, and my sometimes concern is, and you alluded to this here, mindfulness is all over the place. People are using it. Great, fantastic. It's getting out there. That's the important message. But having experience of it and studied it and researched it and been educated in it, it is very important. I know certainly if I was, and I know you understand, you understand this, and you offer training on mindfulness and courses, which is really brilliant for people who want to become coaches, which is fantastic. But it's also a self journey, isn't it? It's about, well, if I'm going to do this, then I really need to believe it and I need to follow it myself.
Absolutely. And, because it's, naturally it's become mainstream because you are tapping into the body's biochemistry and you are becoming more relaxed. So your organism isn't having to work on fight or flight or stress. Mm-hmm. It's got the opportunity to sink into relaxation, and therefore you're not breaking down your immune system, or even worse, clogging up the arteries to your heart because you're so anxious, you're so pressured, you're really stressed, you're the top of the company, whatever it is. If we're not mindful, then we're mindless. And when we're mindless, we're on autopilot. So, you and I like to think about, okay, well, what is mindfulness? So, straight out off the bat there, I could say to you, hey, Kush, do you remember what your first taste this morning was of your coffee? And some mornings you'll go, oh, yeah, definitely. And, what was it like today?
Well, it's funny you say that, and it was a cup of tea, opposed to a cup of coffee. But yeah, I remember the warmth. I remember the taste of it, and it was almost like for me, it was a fluid that was starting to make me alert. So I was aware of it. I can remember it kind of being hot enough to drink. I can remember making it.
Yeah.
So but so I guess what you're asking me is, do you remember the experience of that cup of tea for me in that? And I do.
Good.
And I guess at that moment I was in let's call it the zone. I was there. It was happening. I can remember turning on the tap. I can remember pouring in the water. And I know this is going to be a bit of a dilemma for others. Did you put the milk in first or did you put it in last? That's how you know the people to make
it's the age-old wisdom question. And we will get to the bottom of it.
We will get to the bottom. But I guess the important thing for me is I was in the moment.
Sure. And my point in asking you that, sorry to put you on the spot, some days you will be there and other days you'll be elsewhere.
Absolutely.
You'll be already in work. You'll already be thinking, oh, I've got Paula on Zoom at this time. You won't be present to maybe looking out the window and seeing dewdrops. You won't be present to the little robin redbreast, to the steam coming out of the kettle, to the miracle you've got a kettle, and it's working, and all the people it took to get that kettle into your living room, your kitchen, sorry. So it's this is where you and I both agree there's a gratitude that comes into mindfulness. But the thing is, we're mostly on autopilot. We're taking a shower and we've got 7 people in the shower with us. We're already riding a stress response because we're thinking of the person who gets in our face, or the one who's difficult, and we're worrying, will I be okay in the meeting? So we're not experiencing the water on our body. We're not having the joy of just the peace of that moment, I mean, I've been trying to, when I'm in the shower, to stay mindful without my thoughts going off for years. And I just have never completed it, one whole shower. It could be washing my hair and then I go, oh, okay, now I'm down the road, or, have I got time? So we're not saying that, we're all Zen-like in the moment all the time. But what we're saying is, if we're not on autopilot, because when we're not mindful, we're someplace else. So our life is passing us by. What did John Lennon say? Life's what's happening when you're not looking. Yeah. And so that is literally what happens to us when we don't live our life with awareness. We miss out on this precious human life. So we miss out on the freedom to make the choices to live to our highest potential. And to live to our highest potential, maybe just be breathing through a pain, excruciating pain in a hospital bed. If I can get through this moment, I can get to the next. It's cultivating compassion. It's, I don't know what you think about that, but it's a real experiential. It's not just for the mat, just for the morning. It's how you show up in the world. How kind, we've got computers. How kind we've got all of these things.
I think some very, very important points there you make, Paula. One is about being live, being in the moment, and autopilot. And it can be quite dangerous being in autopilot. If you've moved house, you turn up at your old address. You often get to work and wonder how you've got there. So the consequences of doing that without thinking could be quite dangerous, road accidents and one thing or another. But being in that moment, and then you create that memory, don't you? Sitting out to sea, feeling the breeze on you, looking out, having that calmness. It's all part of the same thing. I guess it's not, and we've alluded to it, it's not easy to do all of the time.
Yeah.
And there is some, like you pointed out right at the beginning, we do have to retrain and reconfigure our brains to think and to follow and to do that as well. So, it's what I'd like us to do, and we've discussed this, is for the latter end of this discussion is, what kind of advice and guidance would you want to give to people who are on this journey of exploration, or trying to find ways of managing this?
Okay, well, I'm on this steering group with the House of Lords, actually. It sounds a bit highfalutin, but it's very down to earth. And we have a Buddhist monk on the group, and he talks often about not just being aware of your thoughts. And I talk often about that because life is an experience, and I elicit experiences through my thoughts. My thoughts create my feelings create my behavior. So the keynote here, the most important golden nugget to take away, is your thoughts are golden. How am I thinking? How am I setting up my day? So this is why we choose to do a relaxation or a meditation or a mindfulness, because we quiet the mind so we can hear the heart speak, so we can feel grateful. So we are taking on a practice, because actually it's the loving kindness that begins with you. So it's really important that you fill your own chalice before you try to go out into the world. So you literally, and when I say fill your own chalice, it is the Holy Grail. This is the spring of life. So if I'm going to say, hey, you know what, Paula, I love you, I'm here for you, I've got your back, today I am going to do my best to show up with love and kindness in everything I do. And if I can achieve that, then of course I'm not going to be stressed. I'm going to be relaxed. So first that would be the mindset, step one. What about you? What type of things do you offer?
I think it's about being consciously conscious,
Right, okay.
being aware.
Yeah.
And as you say, thinking right from the get. And we have days and we have good days, and each day is 24 hours and it changes.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think we put too much emphasis on is thinking too far ahead, right? And so almost assuming what's going to happen in situations. And going back to the point you just made about being calm, being relaxed, being in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you are constantly creating a new experience. And we've heard this many a times, that you can't change other people, but you can change yourself. And therefore, when you change yourself, the reaction of others changes. So it's for me, it's about being in that moment. It's about being aware, mentally, physically, emotionally, of the impact that you're going to have on others and others are going to have on you.
Okay. So like practices, how am I going to get myself in the moment? Things you can do. Mm-hmm. So I would say, have a ping on your phone, on your timer that, just says breathe. One of the most important things, we are, we come into this planet, first thing we do is breathe. The last thing we do is breathe. So our friend, the breath, has already been given to us as the portal to the spirit. Our friend, the breath, is put your hand on your heart and breathe. Take that time just to breathe a little deeper. We know anxiety sits in the throat. It jiggles, sort of all around this area. And so it makes us stressed. So what we're doing is saying, let's just pull that down a bit. Let's just breathe. So let's have mindful awareness with breathing. I think that is like a definite. And little reminders wherever you go, just to say, are you here? Are you now?
Yeah.
Or are you in the future? Have a bit of mindful eating, tasting your food, mindful walking, being aware of everything. So, and you don't need to say mindful, let's just say awareness. Oh, I'm aware I feel anxious. Okay, my friend, anxiety, I'm here for you. Because also people get confused that mindfulness is a relaxation tool. It's not part of the process. I'm very mindful if I was, rock climbing. I recently started tap dancing. I'm really mindful when I'm tap dancing because you've got to keep your eye on every step. So you're in the present moment. So it draws you into the present moment. So it's important to recognize that if you recognize your stress, you're 50% of the way. And if you can get yourself over to 51, then you're working toward a life that will be full of more health and well-being, full of more freedom, because survival, stress consciousness, the fight or flight's not in control. And hey, we're in a pandemic, it's awful. People have got loads of challenges. I know that. I'm not undermining any of that. But what I am saying is we still have a choice. We have a choice how we respond. Think of Viktor Frankl, in the concentration camps. He said they can take everything from me, but not my spirit. So he knew how he was going to respond, because we're not just our body. We are a spirit, we are a soul. And if we can train our body, our personality to be the servant of the wiser part of us that wants to cultivate wisdom, joy, peace, gratitude, all the essential, actual essential spirituality of each of the traditions, actually. These core principles come from that essential spirit. Do unto others as you'd have done unto yourself. And that actually means come to your door first. So every morning, get really close to you and say, how can I serve me today? How can I be kinder to me today? And once you start to do that, and if you've got your little timer going off, it can be your reminder, how can I serve me? Because if I serve me well, I'm definitely going to serve you well.
Absolutely. And the first law of nature is self. And if you
Sorry, Kush, I missed that.
So I was saying the first law of nature is self-preservation. And if we're not kind to ourselves and we don't look after ourselves, then it's going to be a bit of a challenge with others. So, you know, some really good tips there and some really fantastic advice. And I'm sure those who enroll on your courses will certainly learn a lot more about themselves, because I guess it's a journey of self-discovery as well, isn't it? So, which was absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, once again, thank you ever so much. It's been great us having this discussion, and I look forward to our next discussion. So once again, if anybody's got any questions for us, then you can email us at info@thinktreehub.com. And with Paula, you can email us at
info@Smart Foundation. Sorry, I was just listening to you then. So info@Smart Foundation.
You're
being
mindful.
Yeah, completely present.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye.